For those that may not know, I am Araminta Matthews. I am the Director of Educational Effectiveness, but I was originally hired as instructional designer, and I have been an instructional designer for 18 years. I actually teach it in the graduate program at Orono. So Orono has a graduate program for instructional design, and I teach in that program. So been an instructional designer for a while. Most of you are probably blinking and saying, what's an instructional designer? Well, let me tell you. We are the people who are basically the faculty's faculty member. We know what it's like to be in your shoes. So I've taught in higher ed for 20 years and in different capacities in the classroom, hybrid, videography, video-based, entirely asynchronous, competency classes, you name it. I've taught every kind of class you can think of. And we understand how people learn, how to teach and learn. So we have some expertise in pedagogy and andragogy. So pedagogy is how you teach children, because children's minds develop differently until we turn 25. And then when we turn 25, our brains are a little bit different and our needs are different. And that's when we shift over to andragogy. And in higher ed, we get both because we've got people in high school and we've got people who are 25 and older taking our classes. So instructional designers are experts in both andragogy and pedagogy. And then probably what you know us best for is we're also experts at that tool you have to use to teach anything online or to follow some of the policies of your college, otherwise known as your learning management system, in this case, Brightspace. And I have also been an administrator of Canvas, Moodle, Blackboard, WebCT, Google Classroom, Schoolology. So I've seen them all, kids, and let me tell you, Brightspace is just as funky as any other of them, and it's got its problems and it's got its awesomeness. And we're going to teach you how to use Brightspace Gradebook today to the best of our ability. And that is my introduction to kind of instructional design as a whole and to me. But I want to give Laura a chance to introduce herself because her title is actually instructional designer. I am also an instructional designer, but please, Laura, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm 6 months into being an instructional designer here at KVC. I come from another institution in the state where I used to do lecture recordings and things like that. But I'm excited for the fall semester here at KVC, and I am looking forward to working with everybody.
And Laura brings some special abilities. So first of all, Laura has an office on campus. She's in Wonder 117. So if you want to go knock on her door, she shares that space with Skylar Grant, who also works in this group. Skylar works for the BOLTS program, which is the Brightspace student support group I was talking about, or student technical support, not a support group, technical support for Brightspace. And they share an office. And Laura also has an incredible background in videography, which is one of the reasons I wanted Laura here before we hit record. Has worked with Brightspace in a variety of ways, and Laura has some expertise in some really niche areas of instructional design, specifically like coming to it from a place of what barriers learners might have and how to overcome those barriers. So Laura is a great person to talk to, and you might have seen some of Laura's posters around campus. Walk with an ID, that's Laura, because not all instructional design has to be at a computer. Sometimes we do our best work just talking. We'll come up with a creative solution to your problem. So, and that I think is still an option, right, Laura?
It still is, yes.
Yeah. So you can schedule a walk the trails with Laura, get some ideas, head back to a computer and hammer them out. But I do generally start here.
And I was going to say, and if you're on the other campus, I go there too. So it doesn't just have to be in Fairfield on the main campus. So
awesome. So I'm going to hop into a gradebook course site that I made and start sharing my screen. I just got to make sure I get the right screen. Where did it go? I moved it out of the box and now it won't let me share it. There it is. Okay. Go to the course home. So we'll start there. So KVCC has had a policy in place for some time, but we're working really hard to really put our noses to the grindstone on ensuring that it's held, that any class operating on KVCC, regardless of modality, whether you're teaching online, hybrid, or in person, you have at least two things in your course site. One is your syllabus, and I'm going to show you where that goes because the syllabus is actually critically important to how you grade. And the other is your gradebook. Now, if you're using publisher materials like Macmillan or McGraw-Hill or Pearson or Cengage, if you're using materials from a publisher that link into Brightspace and work with your gradebook, that is a specialized case. And you, if you have not set that up already, there are some specialized elements to doing that. I'm going to show you how to set up a gradebook in Brightspace. And you would still need to know how to do this if you're using publisher materials. But there's a level of involvement with publisher materials that goes beyond what we're going to cover today. So that means you'd want to schedule time if you have not already set that up in your world or have already checked that out or done it or had somebody give you publisher materials, because they all work differently. So it doesn't make sense to do a publisher training because if you've got McGraw-Hill and you've got Pearson and you've got Cengage, you're all getting a different learning experience because they all do it differently. Thank you, publishers. So what I'm going to do is cover the gradebook today and those requirements that we have at KV, which is the 2 minimum requirements. And then we're going to go a little bit above that and show you some fancy things that Brightspace can do that might make it easier for you to do your grading. Because what I like to say made me an instructional designer, and I say this all the time, I want to make your life easier. I know what it's like to be you. I started as a college writing professor. I had 9 classes in one semester. Now, I know some of you know what that feels like, but it was a college writing professor, which means all of them were full and they all had papers, and all those papers were 5 pages long. And I made the goofy mistake of having my due dates all on the same day for all 9 classes because I thought that would make it easier to keep track of what my classes were, which meant I was grading 200 papers on a week, on like Labor Day weekend. Like, what was I thinking? So I have learned from that. And I pass that knowledge now on to you. It is my goal always to make your life easier, not harder. So what we're here to learn, ideally, is going to make it easier for you to do the things that you're asked to do, particularly in the gradebook world, because you may have heard assessment from your department chair. If you are a department chair, you've heard it from Kathy. Assessment is a very important aspect of KVCC right now because it's part of our accreditation needs. And assessment essentially means we're checking to see how we're doing, but we can't check to see how we're doing if we don't have a baseline. So this is going to get us a baseline, and then next year we can check how we're doing. By setting up a gradebook, you're setting up a baseline. You're setting up a way to compare how your students did from one semester to the next using data, actual data in your Brightspace course site. So let's jump in. And I apologize, it's that time of year where my allergies come out. So apologize for that right now. You will probably see me do that 100 times today. Okay, so first things first, when you're setting up your gradebook, you have to go by your syllabus. Your syllabus is what the contract that you have with your students. So if you haven't heard that speech before, in brief, I will just say, when you enter into a class, the syllabus is how the students know what they're getting from you and how you know what you are able to expect from your students. If it's not on the syllabus, it's not the law. So I advise that you put whatever policies you want to put into your syllabus above and beyond what KV requires, like if you have a late work policy or a communication policy, Now you put those in your syllabus, but you must have a grading policy in your syllabus. It is required of a KVCC syllabus, and it's part of the template. And you can get the template from Laura has a copy. I can give it to you. Laura, where do we go to get the template? It's
I'm not sure. I got it from Melanie.
Melody. Thank you. I was drawing a blank on her name for some reason, and I've known Melody for years. You can also get it from Melody or your department chair. So the syllabus is where it all starts. You are looking at a course homepage right now, and you are looking at an announcement. Now, when you are developing in Brightspace, it's important to know that your students get to your content about 5 different ways. And I'm telling you this because even though we're covering Gradebook and the syllabus today, if you don't know that, you don't know that your students are going to probably be missing all of that beautiful content you're creating unless you teach them how to find it. So I'm going to be teaching that as I go. I'm going to role model that while we do this, because your students can come to this course through this feature right here, which is an alert. So they can jump into the last thing that you updated on your course site. They can come to the course home where they'll see an announcement. They can scroll down and they can jump into any module they want. They can jump into their bookmarks. So if they bookmarked something and you added something since their bookmark, sorry guys, they're going to their bookmark. They can go by calendar. So if you have due dates set on your stuff, that's really awesome because then they're going to find it. And you can even put due dates on things that they don't have to turn in. Then they'll find it in that calendar. They're going that way. And then they're also clicking on these things up here. They're clicking on content. They're clicking on assignments. I'll just show you what's underneath those. Content takes you to the content page. And they're clicking on communications. They're clicking on grades. And sometimes they're clicking on resources. So learners are getting to our content many different ways. The first time they log in, though, they'll land on that homepage that you just saw. And then ideally, you will have sent them an email or you will have shown them in class. Click content, because that is where you put stuff. Now, it's true. You've got this assignments button here where you're going to make assignments, and I'm going to show you how to do that, quizzes and discussion boards. But you don't want your students to go that way, because if they do, they're going to skip all your content. They're going to miss your lectures. They're going to miss your websites, your readings, your required texts, and all the stuff that you want them to do. And they're also going to miss your syllabus. So that first place that a student lands when they click content for the very first time is overview syllabus. And this is in every course site. And this is where we recommend you put your syllabus. Now, what you're seeing here is a description area. When I click into it, I can edit it. So you could put a welcome message here. I decided to put today's agenda here because this is what we're going to cover today. But you could put a photograph of yourself and your office hours or your phone number or whatever you want. Because it's a descriptive area, all you have to do is click into the box and start typing. Click update when you're done, and whatever you have there is there. And then underneath that is where you would put your syllabus, where it says add attachment. So you're going to want to make sure that your syllabus is on your hard drive, and then you would add that attachment. When I click it, it actually opens up this little box at the bottom of the screen. I hope you can all see it. You might have to move your Zoom depending on what view you have. And it says drag a file here to add it to the overview. So I would then open up my file searcher on whatever device I have. So if I'm a Mac or a PC, I'm opening up the file of my syllabus and I'm dragging it in here. And that will then create a document that the student will always be able to refer to in that overview syllabus area. Some people like to repeat that in a module where they'll create like a start here module and they'll add the syllabus there too. As long as you have your syllabus in at least one place in content and it's visible to students, you have met the requirement. So we've talked about the syllabus. Let's talk about what you do with the syllabus. So your syllabus has to have a grading criteria or a grading element on it. That is a requirement of any syllabus, really, and it's just best practice. And that the way you grade communicates to the student a couple of things. It communicates how you are as an instructor, what your priorities are for the course, what you value, and also what they can expect from you in terms of grades and feedback. And when it's time for them to get their grades and feedback, they can see those a couple of different ways. It depends on how you set your Brightspace course up. If you set up assignments in Brightspace, or if you have them do their assignments in person and hand them to you, they have a couple different ways that they can get there, but most of them are going to just click on this grades button under grades, and it will take them to the gradebook. And this is where it all starts. So this is a mock-up. Laura and Araminta are the only students in this class. And you can tell we're some of us are doing okay. Oh, somebody hasn't been graded yet. We'll look at that in a minute. But this is what the gradebook looks like once students are in it. If you have a different looking gradebook, meaning you have nothing underneath this part of your gradebook, it's because your students have not yet been enrolled in your class, and that's okay. It just means that you're only going to see part of your gradebook while you're setting it up. If your students have been enrolled in your class, then it would look a little bit more like this. And I'll show you in how you're going to get to what you see here. But I want to just break this down a bit for you. You've got your students over here on the left. You've got their final grades, and I have it set up so that the students, when they're enrolled in the class, can see that score because Brightspace is always calculating it for them. So if a student misses 5 assignments, I have to go in there and actually put the 0 in for Brightspace to give them an accurate score. But it's constantly telling them what their score is based on their grades. And as you can tell, I haven't graded Laura's poetry assignment. So Laura's score is not accurate, right? She's seeing that she's got a 75, or actually a 15.2. That's not real. Laura, I know you've done better than that. She's seeing she's got a 15.2, but I haven't graded this. And look at this. This little orange dot tells me she's done work on this since I gave her a 0, so I probably should look at that, right? So final grades, I have it set so that all students can see it, and I will show you how to do that. And then I have my course section based on the syllabus. I have categories, and those categories are each worth a certain percentile of the overall score of my course. Now, in my opinion, of 20 years of teaching, 18 years as an instructional designer, and 15 years teaching almost exclusively online, using categories is the easiest way to set up a gradebook. Now, there are going to be some of you out there who are like, but I grade on the point system. And that is a valid way to grade. You can grade on the point system, and that's totally fine. But setting up a Brightspace gradebook is going to be easier if you have categories. And here's why. When you set up categories in your gradebook, you can be certain that it's going to calculate accurately, because you know that as long as you've put the assignment in the correct category, Brightspace is never going to let this category here, which is called major assignments, be worth more than the 50% it's allowed, right? So, because that's how I set it up. So this is one category, major assignments, and there's a subtotal for that category. And lo and behold, it's 50. I know that this is worth that amount of the total score of the student's final calculated score. No matter what numbers I have in here, it doesn't matter, because Brightspace is always going to factor whether it's 100 or a 6 or a 2.5 or 5 points. It's going to factor within that category to whatever percentile I set it to. So this category here, I think is called practice, is set to 20%. And it doesn't matter if the category is worth 120 points or 5 points. Whatever score they get is going to be 20% of their final score. Everybody with me so far? thumbs up and hand signals all work great. There's emojis in your Zoom call. If you want to use those, you are welcome to. And
Yes,
then
Mina, this is awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ned. Good to hear a voice. So the last section, my final portfolio. So of course, I told you I teach writing. That means I have my students revising all the time, but you might have them doing different things. And I'm going to show you how to set your gradebook up in kind of a universal way. But this last column, I have just one thing in there, and that's okay. I could also just have that one thing be the 25 points, and it will still factor correctly. But I'm going to keep you in categories so that we can keep things simple. And then the last thing I want to show you is, you notice I have this final adjusted grades column, and notice how there's like an I with a slash through it. That means it's invisible to students. Now, I'm going to show you how to set this up using the wizard. You can use the wizard at any point, by the way. You don't have to use the wizard once and done. You can actually use the wizard, say you find it a mistake 5 weeks into the semester, you can use the wizard again. All the wizard is defaults in your gradebook. So I'll show you how to use the wizard in a minute. And one of the things that I did in my wizard is I added a final adjusted grade column because I scale my students. So one of the ways that I make sure I am being true to my grading policy is if my students are, what I do is I take the student who's scoring highest, say she's got like a 98.26, and I take that 2 points that she needs to get to 100, and I give everybody those 2 points. That student gets to 100, and everybody else gets her 2 points too, because that's how I know I've graded true. Does that make sense? Because I teach a kind of a wibbly wobbly class. I teach writing. It's not quantitative like math, where it's really easy to tell if someone's got it right or wrong. I teach writing. Sometimes it's subjective. Maybe I've been hard on one person, so I scale them. And so I have this adjusted grade column, and what that does is it allows me at the end of the semester to take whatever final grade Brightspace has calculated and go in here and actually change it to whatever grade I want the students to actually have. So I explained my method. I would take whoever is closest to 100. And in this case, it's Araminta. But holy smokes, she is really far from 100 because she's got a 62. So I'd have to give all of my students, according to my scaling method, I'd have to give them all 38 points to scale them properly. And that means I am probably wanting to look at my grading methods if I have to give them that many points. But what I do, it's a fraction, as you can see. So I take, let's see, 15.2 out of 75. Maybe I keep the 75. Maybe I make it easy on myself and make it out of 100. And I take whatever score they have and I factor it here. So I know that Laura did not get a 15.2. She got a 75. And I know that Araminta got an 85. And I can save it, and that actually will override their grade without taking away what Brightspace calculated for them. So you can probably see the use for this, right? You want to know what Brightspace calculated for them, but you also want the ability to override that in case they've done bonus points, or they did some extra credit, or they mentored another student in class and earned something that is worthwhile. You want to be able to give them a little something extra. That's what this adjusted column is for. It allows you space to have both the grade that Brightspace factored and the grade that you really think they earned in one place. And you don't lose either, because you still have to submit your grades to Genzabar, soon to be Anthology, at the end of the day, right? So Brightspace is just calculating your grades. So let's talk about the wizard. So I'm going to go back from here, and we're going to talk about how we actually set up the defaults for our grades. So again, first step, syllabus. How am I going to grade this class? I'm going to break it down into chunks. I'm going to say participation is worth 25%, and labs are worth 5%, and major exams are worth 10%, and the final is worth 50%. Like, I'm going to come up with all of that before I go to the wizard. If you have not come up with that already, schedule an instructional design consult. That's a perfect walk and talk conversation. Or talk to your department chair, because chances are, unless it's a brand new course, it's already been determined. But as faculty, you also have some academic freedom to make those determinations. So just make sure you have those numbers before you go to the wizard. The wizard is right here. So I got here by going to grades, and then I'm going to show you the same screen again. And I click the setup wizard, which is right here in the this section of menus. I click the setup wizard, and the first page is going to tell me what my defaults already are. So I've already set this up once, so my defaults are going to look a little different than yours, and that's okay. I'm going to take you through the process of changing your defaults. So you're going to click that start button, and you're going to create your defaults. Now, if you want to use the category system that I just described, which again, I highly recommend because it truly is what Brightspace can handle best, then you're going to click weighted, because that means you have categories and they have weights and there's stuff inside those categories, or I like to think of them as buckets. And each bucket, whatever I throw in that bucket, it's never going to be heavier than 20 pounds, right? Or you could do the point system. If you do the point system, everything you put into Brightspace is relative, meaning if I put an assignment in and it's 20 points and the next assignment is 120 points, Brightspace is going to say that that 120 point assignment is worth 5 times that 20 point assignment. So it's relative. But some people like that point structure. So you can choose either of these. Again, highly recommend you go with categories. In the end, it's so much easier to catch mistakes. And you'll see why, because I'm going to make some deliberate ones after we set up. So I picked categories, and I also have the option of releasing the calculated final grade or doing the adjusted final grade. I want the adjusted final grade because I know I'm going to have to give them extra points. You don't have to choose this, though. You can leave it at the default calculated final grade. I personally, I'm going to put that in there. And it's important to know that even though I've put it in there, I don't have to use it because Brightspace is still calculating the score for me. It's just giving me the option to use it if I decide I need to override things at the end. I found a big mistake and I just need to override everything. I'm going to give myself that option. I'm also going to check this box here, automatically release final grade. The reason why I do that, and it's highly recommended that you do, is this is where the whole point is. This is how the students see how they're doing while they're going through your course. So every time you update a grade in the gradebook, the student gets an updated final score, and they see it in the gradebook, and they can determine for themselves, oh my, I better go get a tutor, or wow, I'm doing pretty good, right? So checkboxing this right here releases the final grade as it's developing, as it's computing in Brightspace constantly for the student. So I leave that checkbox because that's kind of the point of this whole putting your feedback in Brightspace thing. But again, it is an option. Click continue. Now this one often confuses people. So I'm just going to tell you straight up. Drop ungraded items. Select that. Do not treat ungraded items as 0. And I'm going to tell you why. Dropping ungraded items is like saying your students have an A until they fail. So on day 1, they come to your class, they're all A students until they're not. Treat ungraded items as 0 is like saying on day 1, when your students show up to your class, they're all failing until they succeed. And you might have that teaching philosophy, and it's okay if you do. But I will tell you what, if I click this button, treat ungraded items as a 0, that means anything I put in my gradebook that the student hasn't done yet is going to be factored in the final grade as a 0. And if it's September 7th, there's probably like 18 quizzes my student hasn't taken yet, and 5 papers they haven't written and a final that they haven't done. And those are all going to be zeros in the grade book. And they're going to look at their grade book and their heart's going to sink because they're going to think they're failing everything. So I recommend you drop ungraded items. Unfortunately, that does mean extra work for you. It does mean that if the student doesn't do the work, you do have to go in and put a manual 0 into the grade book, but I'll show you how to do that. The upside is their heart doesn't break every time they look at the grade book because they think they're failing absolutely everything because they simply haven't done something yet. So, and there is, I should say everything that I'm telling you today is evidence-backed. We spend a lot of time in research, a lot of time in peer-reviewed scholarly publications. Just had one published. It came out in June in Advances in Online Education, co-authored with an instructional designer at Pratt. So we spend a lot of time in research mode. What I am telling you is evidence vetted. So drop ungraded items is recommended because it's in the spirit of holding your students up on day one. Treating ungraded items as a 0 does have its merits sometimes, but most of the time it's like telling your students they're failing until they pass. So I suggest you keep drop ungraded items, automatically keep final grade updated, click continue. Next, this should be defaulted for you. Sometimes it isn't, but you just need to select the KVCC standard grade scheme, which is right down here. It's alphabetical, so if you don't see it right away, KV. Some of you might actually be using a pass-fail grade scheme. And if it's the 70% pass-fail, feel free to click that. But 99% of you are using KV's structure, so go ahead and click that and continue. And again, it should be defaulted to that. If it's not, just select it. This is the number of decimals you want displayed. This is up to you. You're going to potentially round up or round down a student's grade, right? So you could have 0 decimals and just see the actual score, or you could have this set to 2 decimal places, and that'll give you kind of a better view of, like, you'll be able to see if they're 85.46. So really they're 85.5, so really they're 86, right? Like, it's all about how you want to round. So number of decimal places, I'm going to put 2 in there and click continue. 2 is the default, by the way, but you can change that. And then this is student display options. So I just want to make sure that my students can see the points value of their grade, their weighted grade, the grade symbol, the grade scheme color. As you might have noticed in that first scene, if you're failing, you get a red block. If you have an A, I think it's blue. If you have a B, it's green. If you have a C, it's orange. So like there's a color pattern. That is really up to you. Not everybody can see in color, so you can leave it checked or not leave it checked. It's up to you. It can be helpful to kind of at a glance see if you can see in color how your students are doing, like to skim the page just by the rainbow. You can get a pulse check of, oh, everybody's in blue, great, they're all getting A's, or everybody's in red, uh-oh, I got to do something. That can be helpful. I noticed it changed the number of decimal places to display. Remember how I changed it to 2? This is why it's so important to check these things. So I'm changing it back to 2. And then number of characters to display for text items. So that means the column title of everything that you put in your grade book. How many characters can that title be? So not more than 50. If it's longer than 50 characters, you're going to want to shorten your title anyway, because it's going to take up a lot of space in your grade book, a lot of horizontal space, and you'll be scrolling left and right forever. So again, display final grade calculation to users. I have that checked. Click continue. The last page is just are you sure this is what you want? It's reminding me everything I asked for. Yes, I'm sure. I click finish, and then it's set my default. Now that I've set my default, I can actually go in and create some categories. Now, remember, I've already created those categories. So I'm going to show you how to create a category and how to create a grade item manually. And once you create your categories, you don't have to recreate them, right? Because categories are one and done. Those are the buckets, right? That's participation is worth 25%. That is one bucket. You will never change that bucket. It is one time and done. But items, you might add all through the semester, or you might do them all on day one, right? So let's add a category, because I'm going to purposefully break my gradebook. Right now, my gradebook is not broken. I want to show you what it looks like when it is. I'm going to add a category. We're going to say in my syllabus, it says that students earn 10% of their grade from discussion, engagement, participation. I actually am adding that word because I'm afraid I might have accidentally called another category discussion, engagement. I don't want to mess that up. The weight is whatever I want it to be. So remember, going back to the syllabus, if it's the final project, maybe that's 25 that I put there. If it's all the assignments and quizzes, maybe it's 50 that I put there. I want this to be worth 10%, so I'm going to leave that as a 10. So discussion, engagement, and participation is worth 10% of their final score. This is an important section to remember now, because this is where often things get thrown off in your gradebook. This next section, distribution. The default is manually assign weight to items in the category. Okay, remember how earlier I said points are relative? And if you set up your gradebook so that something is worth 20 points and the next thing is worth 120 points, Brightspace is going to make those a ratio to each other. Well, if you leave things manually assign weight to items in the category, it's doing that. So it's really important that you distribute weights by points across all items in the category. That's how you're going to avoid breaking your category if you decide to add an item later. So in other words, you have a category, it's discussion engagement. You have 5 discussion boards, and you're at midterm and you realize we need a 6th discussion board. We haven't even talked about this yet. And you need to add that discussion board. And as soon as you add it, you're going to break your category, unless you have one of these 2 items selected. So select one of these 2 items out of the gate and you don't break your category. So distribute weights by points across all items in the category, or distribute weights evenly across all items. And if I click this one, I really like this one for things like quizzes and assignments, where I'm going to drop the lowest score. I've decided there's 11 quizzes, and I'm going to let the students drop the lowest scoring quiz. And we're only going to score the top 10 scoring quizzes, and Brightspace is going to calculate that for me. I like this bottom one for that, if that is a policy that I have for my students. If not, just leave it at the middle. And then click save and new if you're going to make a new category, or save and close if you're done. Okay, so let's say I've put all my categories in. We're Julia Childs today. It's all done. It's all baked. Oh no! What's this? It's telling me that my final calculated grade sums to 110%, not 100%. Well, that means my gradebook is broken. If you ever see the red word note and then something that looks like this, your gradebook is not functioning correctly. There is something broken in it, and you either want to consult an instructional designer, or you want to check it manually yourself if you know how. So can anyone tell me why my gradebook is calculating at 110% instead of 100? I'll scroll down a bit. No one's brave enough. It's calculating at 110% because I just put another category in there that's 10%, and I already had my 100%. So I broke my grade book. This is very common. That's why I wanted to share it with you. It's very common that you'll accidentally throw something into your grade book and not categorize it properly, and it throws off your grading. And I'm going to show you how to fix that. So right now, my grades are calculating to 110, not 100. Often this will happen because I added an item and I didn't put it in the right category. So I'm actually going to go do that first. I'm going to add an item. And then I'll show you how to fix the broken gradebook. But let's say you're adding an item to your gradebook. And this item is something that you would be manually grading. Because if you're adding something to your gradebook that is an assignment, a discussion, or a quiz, and you're going to add it through Brightspace itself, then you're going to do it through assignment, discussion, or quiz. The only time you add an item is when it's something you are manually scoring, meaning I am walking around the room or the field, and I am looking at my students doing their work, and I am manually scoring something that they have not handed into Brightspace. Or it's something like participation, right? I manually score participation because there's nothing for a student to throw into Brightspace for me to grade, right? So I'm going to put a manual item in here. We're going to call it CPR validation experiment, where they actually perform CPR on a dummy. And if I'm doing my job properly, I have created all my categories. And at this point, I would click the drop down and I would figure out which one it belongs in. CPR belongs in major assignments. And if I put it there, I'm not going to have any problems because it's in the right place. But I'm not going to put it there. I'm going to forget because I forget all the time. In fact, everybody forgets all the time to put their items in categories. So I'm going to forget to do that, and I'll show you what happens. I'm going to make this worth 25 points. If I choose to exceed or bonus, choosing to exceed means I'm telling the gradebook that I want to be able to give my students 26 points and that have Brightspace treat that like extra credit. So choosing to exceed means you're giving yourself the ability to give a grade higher than 25. And whatever you make higher than 25 is extra credit in the gradebook. And then bonus is telling Brightspace, this actually is a bonus item. If the student does it, it's already extra credit. Otherwise, don't factor it in the gradebook. So I'm actually going to leave both of those unchecked because I really actually want my students to do this assignment. Save and close. Weight error is required. Oh, right, because of categories. Let me fix that. Save and close. Now my gradebook is grading 135%, not 100%. Would anyone care to tell me why my gradebook is off this time? What's wrong with it? Why is it 135, not 100?
Did you do the same? Did you do the same thing as you never fixed the first mistake, or let's not call it mistake, and then you added another point value, so you're just increasing that.
Bingo. Bingo, bingo. Yes, Ned got it. 5 gold stars. So I made a mistake, and this mistake happens all the time, which is why I wanted to show it to you. All the time, we are adding things to our gradebook, and we are not putting them in the right place, or we're not putting the right point value, or we're not clicking that distribute points evenly button in the category, and we're going to get this error message. And if we get this error message, our gradebook is not correct. Whatever our student is seeing is not correct. So we have to correct it. If you get this, reach out to us, we'll help you. But I'm going to show you how I'm going to correct it right now. So you'll normally see this in the enter grade section, right? Because normally you're going to be coming to your gradebook like ready to grade, right? Not coming to your gradebook having just set it up and it's all broken. So normally you will come and you'll come to your regular gradebook and you'll be ready to grade and you'll see what? Oh no, something's off. 135, not 100. I need to fix this. And from here, you would click manage grades. This is how you correct any mistakes in your gradebook. So I know there's a mistake because it tells me. So I'm going to go to manage grades to figure out what the mistake is. And this is where I'm going to find it. Now, if you have your Zoom on the right, you might want to move it over to the left so that you can see this part of my screen where my cursor is circling right now. So the first thing I'm looking for is the weights. Now, because I set my gradebook up based on categories, everything has a weighted value. And major assignments are worth 50. And if I did my job right, weights always calculate to 100. So if I've got numbers in the gray, you see how that's subtly gray and this is white? If my gray numbers add up to anything above 100, I've messed up. So 50, okay? Then this is practice assignments. This is gray, 20. So I'm up to 70. Scroll down. This is gray, 5, 75. Okay, great. This is gray, 25. 75 plus 25 is 100. Great. So that's 100. Oh, discussion, engagement, participation, 10. That's gray. Uh-oh, I messed up. And what's this 25 thing doing here? That's white. But that's still a mess up because it's adding to 135. So let's fix this. So the first thing I did was I checked my weights and I discovered, yes, my weights are off by 10. I still don't know where that 25 is coming from, but I'm going to figure it out in the next step. So my weights are off by 10 because of the grade areas, right? That's how I added up. But I know my final grade is off more than that. So I've got to still figure out where that 25 is coming from. But at least I know my weights are off by 10. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click this button so that everything's selected, and I'm going to click bulk edit. And this is the easiest way to fix pretty much anything in your gradebook ever. So the first thing I'm going to do is look for what might be throwing off that 25. And actually, no, I'm going to go back a step. I am so sorry. Pretend I didn't bulk edit just now. Rewind. And I select everything because I'm fixing the category error, not the item error. I need to delete that extra category that I made. So that's under more actions. I apologize for leading you astray a moment ago. Sometimes my paths go in wandering directions, and I'll just offer this. Yesterday, my kid put a bead in her ear and needed emergency surgery. And it's like my brain was put in a blender, because has anyone had a kid put like something weird in their ear or their nose? It makes your parent life crazy. So we're lucky that I am even able to communicate in English right now. So thank you all for bearing with me. So bringing us back, I discovered a categorical problem. There was one category that was 10 points, throwing off my weight. So I need to delete that. So I click bulk edit, select everything, delete. Don't worry, it's not going to delete. It's going to take me to a new page because Brightspace thinks I need to double check everything, which is kind of a good thing. And I'm going to find that one category that I know I didn't mean to put in there. I'm going to check it and I'm going to delete it. Are you sure you want to delete this? Yes, I'm sure. That's going to get rid of the 10% problem that I had, but I still have that 25 problem. Now I'm going to show you how to fix that. Select all, bulk edit. And then this is how we're going to look. So because I have used categories, and remember, I said categories are the easiest way to tell if your Brightspace is calculating correctly. This is how categories are the easiest way. Everything that I have put in my gradebook, whether I have put it in through assignments, discussion boards, quizzes, and I will show you that, or manually, like I did that CPR validation test, because I have to go around and actually watch people do that. That's a manual item. Everything needs to be in a category. And I need to move my zoom so I can scroll to the left here. And this is the category area. So let me make my screen a little bit smaller. I know that's going to be hard to read, but I want you to be able to tell that over here on the left is the name of the assignment. or the category. And over here on the right is the category that the assignment is in. Now, it's very faint, but if it's gray, it's a category. And that gray will equal this weight. We'll have a equivalent column that says weight, and it'll tell you what the weight is. And then indented underneath that are the items that are in that category. Everybody with me? So I've got 2 items in my major assignment category. I've got poetry and I've got A4 assignment that reuses content in Brightspace. It's a really long name. And both of those are worth different point values. And I can tell that they are in the category, because if I go over here to the right, I can see they're both in the major assignments category. I can also see pretty quickly over here, because it's indented under the category. So I've got these practice assignments, everything that's indented under that. I've got, by the way, I use these little codes. I recommend you use them too. A1, A2, that's assignment 1, assignment 2, Q1, Q2. That's an easy way for me to tell the difference when I'm in here correcting whether this is a quiz, an assignment, or a discussion board. Just an easy way to tell the difference, because sometimes a practice assignment is a quiz. Sometimes it's a discussion, right? So it's indented, it's in the right category, it's in the right category. I'm looking for one that's in none category. Because if it's in none category, that means it's not calculating in one of those buckets. So this CPR validation, 25 points, either needs to be put in a category or needs to be deleted. So I know that I actually need this, so I'm going to keep it. I'm going to put it in major assignments. That's where it belongs. And this will have corrected that 25% error that was throwing off my gradebook, because everything is in a category. So this is why I want you to just take a second here. I'm going to just kind of do something real quick and show you. If you're correcting a gradebook, or if you just dropped a bunch of assignments in your gradebook all at once, you were on a roll and you built out 5 weeks worth of content, you dropped a bunch of assignments into Brightspace, they may not be categorized yet. So the easiest way to fix that is to come over to your manage grades and look for the ones that say none, and then click the drop down and put them where they belong. And I'm going to do that now. And as you can see, the way that I'm doing it, it works pretty well because I can do it all at once, right? So I did all my assignments at once, and now I come over here and I categorize them all. And if I did it right, when I click save, I'm not going to have that error message anymore. Ta-da, no error message, it's gone. Just to be sure, I'm going to go to enter grades. No error message, it's gone. So my gradebook is now calculating correctly. Okay, so let's talk about grades and how we get graded items into the gradebook. I showed you one way. I created a manual graded column, the CPR column. So that's, again, that's something that I would likely observe in person, or like participation. It's something that you grade tangibly. It's not something that a student is handing into Brightspace. But I can still grade that anytime I want. So let's say Laura and Araminta did their CPR yesterday. I pop into my gradebook. I have their scores. I wrote it down on a sheet of paper that day because I walked around with my clipboard. I go to grades, come to CPR, click enter grades. And from here, I put in their score and I'm going to give them feedback. And I can do it in any order I want. I can go one by one. So I can do Laura first. She got a 24, go Laura. Araminta didn't do so well. She got a 20. I mean, that's an 80, but you know, she didn't do quite as well as she hoped. And I can save the numbers so that the scores are saved. And then I can go and do the feedback next. Oh, there we go. And pop in. Can you all see the feedback pop-up? Did the pop-up come on the screen? Okay, sometimes pop-ups don't show up, so just making sure. So feedback.
Yes.
So grade feedback for Laura Ingalls. I'm going to say, great job with the mannequin today. You did all the right things and kept the beat staying alive. So I just gave her some feedback. And when Laura comes as a student later to look at her score, she's going to be able to see the feedback that I just gave her. Let me give some feedback to Araminta. I'm confirming grade feedback for Araminta, and I'm going to type, you were off a bit, less staying alive and more mostly people who die. Little macabre musical 80s humor for you there. Because for CPR, you're supposed to go to the rhythm of staying alive, right? Okay, all right. So I've done my grades for these people. I'm going to click save and close. That was a manual item, but you're going to see in the gradebook as soon as I close, because it's going to take me back to the gradebook, that their scores have updated. See? That the final calculated score, Laura is now 31.24 out of 75 points. Araminta is 62.14 out of 75 points. That's off. I'm curious why that is happening, but I'll figure that out later. So that's how you would grade a manual item. Now, I'm going to go a little bit in reverse here because I'm showing you how you actually enter grades. I want to show you how you would enter grades for things that have been submitted through Brightspace. And then I'm going to go backwards and show you how to make the thing that would allow a student to enter it through Brightspace. Okay, so this poetry assignment is an assignment that lives in the content area that Laura had to submit something to Brightspace to. And I can tell because of this little, like, it looks like a piece of paper in a Dropbox, right? And the orange dot tells me I haven't looked at it yet, or at least I haven't looked at it since the last time she touched it. So if you see a symbol like this, it means that you created something in Brightspace that allows your students to submit to Brightspace, as opposed to what I just showed you, which is a manual column where you have to go in and actually enter the scores. And I think I have a quiz in here too. I just want to show you what a quiz, well, I have a discussion board. So the discussion board symbol looks like 2 chat bubbles, right? So if you make a discussion board that's graded, that's what you'll see. And I think I have a quiz. I guess I don't. A quiz, you will see either, oh, I do. Yes, I do. Sorry. You will see the question mark for quiz. And if you set it to machine grade, you'll also see the score. If you only see the question mark, it means that you need to set the score. So those are the 3 things that you can set in Brightspace that a student has to do something in Brightspace to get a grade from you. There is one more thing, but mark as complete assignments, and I'll show you that toward the end. But let me show you how we're going to grade assignments. So assignment is the paper in the box symbol, right? And I want to grade Laura. I actually want to grade everybody in this column. So I am going to go enter grades. And I am going to click on Laura's poem, which I have not seen before. So Laura may be playing a nice joke on me today. We will see what Laura put in for her submission here. When I click it, it's going to take me to the grading area of the gradebook. And what I love about this is, do you see these little buttons in the upper right-hand corner, arrow keys? Once I clicked on Laura's assignment, everybody who submitted an assignment is now in these arrow keys. Now, Araminta didn't submit one, which is why you're only seeing 1 of 1. But if she had, you'd be seeing 1 of 2. And I'd be able to use this arrow key to go see the next one in the list. The other thing that's pretty awesome about when you set Brightspace up to be the accepting tool for your assignments is when the student submits it as a PDF or a docx or a doc file, so Microsoft Word or PDF, picture display format, you can click it and it will display right on the screen for you. So you can see it. Oh, wow, you lorem ipsum to me. Laura, lorem ipsum to me. Say that 10 times fast. Nice job, lorem ipsum. So I have this beautiful poem in Latin, which I do speak. if anyone speaks Latin. And lorem ipsum means nothing, it's gibberish. But what I want to show you is that I have some annotation features and I have the grading and feedback feature over here. So the annotation features are really cool. I have a pen. I can circle things. I can point to things. I can put a text box in and say, this part here is weird. I can do all of those things. And when I save it, when Laura goes to look at it, she'll be able to see my circle, my arrow, and my text box right there on her document. So that's kind of a cool feature. And then over here, I can grade her. I'm going to say lorem ipsum is kind of derivative, Laura. So you're getting a 10 on this assignment. I feel like I've seen lorem ipsum in other places. So derivative poem, sorry, Laura. And I'm going to give you that feedback. This is derivative of other Latin poem. Find your voice. And I'll publish that. Now, if I had another student to grade in that column, I'd be able to click this arrow, but I don't. I only have one student submit. So I'm actually, I'm going to make sure that I published. I did publish. I know that because it says update now. I'm going to X out. It's going to bring me back to this screen. I have to refresh. This step, sometimes people forget. So I'm going to say that again. I have to refresh. Notice when I refresh, Laura's grade and feedback will be there. That's an important step because if I were to hit save and close right then and there, it would override her grade. So notice how it updated. She got a 10, a D plus because of her derivative lorem ipsum poem, but Araminta gets a 0. And her feedback is do the assignment. Save. And once I save and close from here, that will update the full gradebook. Let's see how that goes. Okay, so see, notice the colors are changing. Like I said, the colors give you that kind of clue. So I want to show you 2 more things in the graded area, and then I'll show you how to make those graded items. So I want to show you discussions. So let's go here. So when I grade, I always go to my gradebook and I go to the column and I enter grades. There are a couple of different ways you can grade. There's something called quick eval. You can grade that way. I don't like that because it has you grade based on the last thing students submitted. And so I might grade a quiz, a paper, a quiz, a paper, a paper, a paper, a discussion board, a quiz. I like to grade everything all at once because sometimes I catch my own mistakes that way. So I come here, I find the column, discussion board, I click enter grades for the whole column. And then I find the first submission and I click on it. And it'll open up just like the assignments did. Over here on the left is the assignment. And she lorem ipsum to me again. So, but it's good because notice how it shows me one thread and one reply. I wanted to show you a discussion board particularly because the way that it'll show you a discussion is it's going to show me Laura's original post, right? Because when you make a discussion, you want the student to respond to your prompt, but also all of her replies. And it does show me this out of context. So if I need to see it in context, I want to go to the actual discussion board and look at it, but I don't need to see it in context because I know the grading criteria. The grading criteria are have a post and reply to at least one of your classmates. She did that. So I'm going to go ahead and give her her score. And we'll say she earned 22 this time. Feedback, update. And look, I've got an arrow key this time because somebody else did an assignment. So I'm going to just jump to the next student. Oh, this one's one thread, 2 replies. She gets 25 because she went above and beyond. Nice work. Thanks for replying. To 2 students. Whoa. Update. And then when I'm done, I've done users 2 of 2. I've done everybody. I go ahead and close that out. Remember, refresh. It updated Laura to a B+, Araminta to an A. Save and close. Back to the gradebook. Yes, I want to overwrite. Back to the gradebook. And everybody's updated. Look, those numbers are changing again because everybody's getting updated today. And then the last thing I'll show you in the grading area is quizzes. Most of the time when you set up a quiz in Brightspace, you are setting it up to auto grade because you want that feature. So you can set up a quiz that is multiple choice, multiple select, which means there's more than one right answer in a multiple choice question, true or false, fill in the blank, matching, short answer, and all of those can be machine graded. Short answer would be something like, what does CPR stand for? And then you would type in what CPR stands for, and then you'd tell Brightspace whether or not to accept it if they didn't capitalize or if they spelled it wrong or what have you. You still want to kind of put eyes on those because sometimes students just misspell words by mistake, and Brightspace wouldn't know that. But for the most part, short answer is machine graded. So here, if I want to check their quiz score, I click on it. Did the pop-up pop up for everybody? No, it didn't pop up this time. Okay. Well,
No.
rather than take you down that rabbit hole, trust me that when I click that question mark, a pop-up will pop up that shows you that particular student's quiz and how many attempts they had on the quiz, and you'll be able to open up their quiz experience and see how well they did. So that does happen. Just like all the other pop-ups happened, that happens when you click on the question mark. I could also manually grade her and see it that way. Maybe you'll be able to see the pop-up from here. Let's just see. Are you able to see it now? Nope. Okay.
No.
Bummer. All right. Another day, because we are, I'm keeping an eye on the time and I want to make sure to show you how to create the gradable items in Brightspace. And I want to show you really quickly what a rubric is. So there was one other thing in the gradebook I want to show you exists. And that was a mark as complete assignment. A1 mark as complete assignment. Now, the reason I am showing you this is it is possible to create in your content assignments that are simply graded by the student pushing a button. And that might be valuable to you if you need them to read something. Maybe you only want it to be worth 1 point. You can also make an assignment worth no points, and they still have to click that mark as complete button. So in this case, the mark as complete assignment that I'm going to show you how to make or show you the mock-up of is worth 1 point, but you could theoretically put your content into assignments, have them set as mark as complete, and then you'll know if your students did them or not, even though it's just a reading. So let's jump into content and learn how to do that. Okay, so we're now in content. When you are creating assignments, discussions, quizzes, anything you want your students to do, I encourage you to build everything from content, because I also encourage you to teach your students to go through this content button to get everything. Because if you don't, they're bouncing around, and if they bounce around, they miss things. So when you build, the first thing you need to do is make sure you have a module. Now, your first course, if you have an empty course, you will have nothing under table of contents. So the first thing you'd have to do is create a module. And then you can start adding things to it. And you can either add new things that you create from scratch, which I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to add an assignment. Or you can add things that already exist, things that you've created, maybe copied over from another course site. But I'm going to show you how to create a new assignment right now. Now, an assignment, I want you to think of these as all features, right? Because just because Brightspace calls it an assignment doesn't mean it's an assignment. It could be a quiz. An assignment is simply a document that the student uploads to Brightspace that only you can see. So you could create a quiz that's a document, like a sheet of paper, that you're going to grade manually, and you actually make it an assignment. but you'd call it a quiz. You following me? Because the feature of an assignment is simply that the student can upload something. Does that make sense? And only you see it. The feature of a discussion board is that the student can upload something and everybody sees it. The feature of a quiz is that the student takes a quiz. They answer questions that you created and only you see it. Sometimes Brightspace grades it, sometimes you do, sometimes both of you do. Okay, so the assignment, I just want you to think of it in terms of the feature. It's a place where the student can upload something that only you see. So it could be where you put your final exam, if your final exam is mostly handwritten, right? It also can be a reading assignment. R1, read this text, where you copy and paste a bunch of text here that you maybe hand wrote. I'm going to leave it ungraded because I want to show you that mark as complete option. And over here are the conditions of my assignment. I'm going to do a slight change. So the default is file submission. If I want my students to submit a document, which is typically what people use assignment for, then I'm going to leave that file submission there. And I would make it graded, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a second, but I want to show you the mark as complete. If I want to make this a mark as complete assignment, I need to select observed in person. Notice how it changed the next drop-down box? I now have 3 options. It can be marked as complete automatically on the due date, automatically on evaluation, meaning I have to look at the page and press it for the student, or manually by learners. And that is the one where the student pushes the button themselves. Up here, start date, end date. Notice the due date isn't here, it's over here. If you put a start and end date on your assignment, basically what that does is it keeps the student from seeing it until the start date starts, and then it stops them from seeing it when the end date is there. So I typically recommend you don't use end dates because an end date stops the student from seeing their own work and your feedback on it. There are workarounds to that, but we're keeping it simple today. So that was if I wanted to do a mark as complete assignment, right? Where I want the student to have a button that says mark as complete. And that's something really special when I want them to read or complete a task that I'm not necessarily going to read something for. But let's say they need to hand in a paper. This is a classic assignment. It's a paper. So I'm going to make this A2 paper work assignment. I'm going to make it a file submission. And notice how it's unlimited, no restrictions. I do recommend you leave it this way, and then in your instructions, which is right here, say upload your document as a DOC, DOCX, or PDF. Because if they upload it as pages, which is a Microsoft word processing file, you won't be able to read it in the grading area. Really any other type than docx or PDF, you won't be able to read it. So put that in your instructions. Put any other instructions you have here. You also, the students also have a comment box. So you can say, add a comment to the box with your citation list if you want. I mean, I want them on the paper, but you could have them put any comment you want. Add a comment to the box with your feedback about the book. Whatever you want, because every assignment comes with a comment box. And then the other thing that the assignments have that are worth noting are these features here. File upload, add a link to an activity, Google Drive, cloud, record audio, record video. So you could also say record audio or record video for this assignment, because the student has those 2 buttons too. And when you're giving your feedback to the students, you also have these 2 buttons. That's a little complicated, so I'm going to leave that out of this example. but I wanted to draw your attention to its existence because sometimes it's helpful. Say you're teaching a foreign language class. Maybe you want students to talk back and forth in a discussion board. Okay, so this is a file assignment. I've put my instructions in. I'm now going to give it its point value. It's worth 10 points in the gradebook. It's in the gradebook. Let me give it a due date. I'm going to give it a due date of today. And I'm going to give it a due time of 2 a.m. because we're late. I want to show you how that works. And it's important because I've added it to the gradebook. Remember, I set a gradebook up with categories. So I need to click this box, edit or link to existing. Can you see the pop-up? Okay. I need to make sure it's in the category. And I can do that one of two ways. I can either do it the way I showed you the first time, which is, let's say you're on a roll and you're just banging out those assignments. Well, you can add them all to the category under Manage Grades, look for anything that's listed as none category, put it in the right category, or you can choose your grade category right here. And this is paperwork, so it's under major assignments. Click OK. And when I'm done with this assignment, the student will now have a place to upload their work that I will be able to grade from. Two other things to remember. I need to make sure it's not hidden from the student. So do you see this button down here? It's an eyeball that's crossed out. You might have to move your Zoom toolbar up to see it, but it's very important I make it visible. Otherwise, the student can't see it. It's invisible until I make it visible. And I need to click Save and Close. And what that's going to do is it's going to drop this assignment into that module for the student to complete. So it is now there. If I follow my breadcrumbs to module 1, gradable assignment right there for the students. It was due 11 hours ago. Uh-oh. And the student gets that note. If you put a due date and time in there, they get that note. They know when it's due. And if I go to grade it, I know how late they turned it in because it'll be in red right next to their submission. It'll say 3 days late or 4 hours late right next to it. So real quick, I'll show you how to make a discussion board that's graded and how to make a quiz. So discussion board, if I'm making a new one, new discussion. Discussions need to be in a forum, but you only need one forum. So you can make one forum for all your discussions. And you need a topic for your discussion. So we'll say, talk about discussions. This is going to be graded. 15 points. I need to make sure it's in the gradebook again. So I've got to make sure that it's in the right category. This one's practice. Okay. Post your response by the due date. Respond to classmates by Friday. So make a few adjustments over here. I can change it so that the students can't see anything until, can't see what other people have posted until they've posted. I can make it so that I have to approve everything that's posted. Like, I'm really afraid that Johnny's going to swear. So I check this box and I have to approve everything before it gets posted. Or I can allow learners to hide their name from others. That's an icky one from my perspective. It can be helpful if you're doing like anonymous feedback, but if you're going to give somebody feedback, you probably should be willing to stand by it and say your name. But these are options that you have in the post completion. And then evaluation feedback, you can create a rubric right here, or you can add a rubric that already exists. So a rubric is like a measuring tape for grades. It's simply a pre-constructed way of grading any assignment. I will show you one before we end today, but we do not have time to go over making them in completion. So how about I show you one right now? Because I can add an existing one. So I've got a couple of existing rubrics. There's two types. There's holistic and analytic. I'm going to add the analytic one. And let me just show you what that looks like. Oh, I wish I'd done that differently. So this is a pre-made rubric. You can make rubrics too. Rubrics are really awesome when I need to give the same feedback over and over again, because then when I'm grading my students for this 15-point discussion, all I have to do is click a button for their grade. You see? And it'll spit out the points for me. I don't have to do it myself. I've pre-made it. And each of these boxes has a different set of feedback for the student and a different point value. So this is what a rubric looks like when you score with it. And if you want to create a rubric, we'll have another session at some point. I'll show you how. Or you can sign up for a meeting with Laura or myself. So I'm going to go ahead and click, I made it visible, save and close. It's going to drop it into the module, just like I said. And then the last thing, it always shows you like what you made. So you can follow your breadcrumbs back. The breadcrumbs are right up here. So I'm going to go back to module 1. The last thing that you would make would be a quiz that you might make from scratch. Other than content. Content is different, mind you. Content is like lecture or video or stuff you want the students to read passively. We're talking about stuff you're grading right now. So I'm going to make this quiz real quick. Quiz quick. Take this quiz. It is in the gradebook, but I'll add that after because I'm going to start adding questions. So to make my quiz, unless I am using publisher materials or a ready-made quiz or a test bank, I just start with the first question. Create new question. My first one's multiple choice. Can you all see the pop-up? Okay. First question is, what is the right answer? This is right. Wrong, wrong, wrong. I checkbox the one that's right. That tells Brightspace which one to grade correctly. I can randomize the answer order so that when the students get it, if they're sitting next to somebody, that it doesn't look the same to them. And I can give it a point value. I want this to be worth 5 points. I click save, and my first question is now in the quiz. And notice how the point value of the quiz mimics what I have for questions. So if I had like 500 questions and they were all worth 5 points, this would be 1,000 points up here. So I have control over all those points. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the gradebook because that is a good habit. I'm going to choose its category. This is a practice assignment. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Make sure it's visible, save and close. And now I have a quiz that my students can complete. So those are the 3 things that are interactive elements that your students would do in Brightspace that would create something for you to grade in Brightspace, as opposed to what I showed you in the beginning, which is a manual column, which is when you create what you're going to grade in Brightspace and you go through it and you grade it manually. So we have 1 minute left. I'm really good at timing today. Remember, beat in the ear. So any questions that you have for me at this point? And remember, this is recorded and we will be hosting this and I will share this with you.
Yes. No, that was my question. So that's great.
Okay.
So Nina,
I will take Kara first. I think I heard Kara first, and then was that you, Kara? And then
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
If a student has accommodations and needs to have permission to open a quiz earlier than peers, how do you make it so 1 or 2 or however many need accommodations can open a quiz a half an hour earlier than others, etc.?
So that is a very good question. You, when you are in the quiz, you have release conditions in the upper right. This is actually for everything, for assignments as well. And you can make a special access or a release condition. So in this case, it sounds like a special access. You'd say, you'd actually allow specific users to access the quiz, and you just set that up using that feature.
Okay, perfect.
And release condition would be if you wanted to restrict it by date, right? So special access or other more complicated release conditions. So if you have an accommodation that's more complicated than what I just showed you, make an appointment so I can walk you through the nuances, because there's a lot of different types of accommodations. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Ned?
Mina, what if somebody drops? Can I hide them or take them out of the grade book?
I believe that we have it set up so that when a student drops, they are removed from the gradebook after a certain number of days.
Okay.
Because it's run through a script. So we use a system in the registrar's office that connects to
Mhm.
Brightspace. And I'm pretty sure after a certain number of days, they're hidden from your view anyway. But I might be wrong about that. So
But ultimately, that's not something I can control, if you will. It's registrar that does it.
it is the registrar that does it. Yes.
Okay.
I think theoretically you could hide a student from your view, but that can get tricky later if you like if they come back and you forgot about them.
Yeah.
Finding them. So but
Oh,
yeah, ultimately go to the registrar with that. Any other
that
questions? Oh. Awesome. You've been a great group. I hope today was helpful for you. Remember, instructional designers exist and we are here to help you. So reach out if you need help and we are happy to do it.
it was priceless. Thank you, thank you,
Awesome.
thank you.
Happy to help. I'm glad it was helpful. Take care, everybody. All right, Laura, it should have recorded for you, right? You can fetch it because you're co-host.